Welcome to the Quick and the Brave podcast, where we share stories for the people, by the people, about the people. Subscribe to our YouTube and mailing list for the latest interviews, news, and more. The Quick and the Brave. Culture today. Hi everybody, welcome to the Quick and the Brave podcast. I'm Marianne, and today I have the great pleasure of being in conversation with Malika Ali Harding. Hi Malika.
Hello.
It's already off to a great start. So Malika is a multidisciplinary artist and meditation guide based in Amsterdam, originally from the States, from Ohio, I believe, from Cleveland, Ohio. And she's going to be speaking with us today about a really beautiful, personal and intricate story about her Uncle David. So this is a project called The Way Our Tongues Move. Malika, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us today about this. And yeah, this project that you've been developing across. You have this across performance, across visual art, sound, oral storytelling, and there's so many intricate threads that you're weaving together with this. So I want to start at the top and find out a bit about your relationship with intentionality, and how is that featured in your life and in your creative process?
Well, first, I want to thank you. I'm a big fan of The Quick and the Brave, so it is a complete and total honor to be here. So thank you for the invitation. I didn't expect it to come so soon, but I'm happy that it did. Well, with intentionality, I think setting intentions and working with intentionality as a tool is something that I use more when guiding meditations than I do with my art practice. With my art practice, it's more the tool that I use there is more visioning. But whenever I'm leading or guiding or facilitating myself or others in meditation, we do set an intention as a way of sort of anchoring into the space, anchoring into that time, honoring that time with whether we're setting an intention to make space for our own rage or grief or joy, or to connect with connect with our ancestors, or to connect with our own sense of safety or peace. That's how I engage with intentionality. But for the art practice, it's more about creating a vision, and more about imagination and making space for the way my mind moves, the way my heart moves, the way our tongues move.
It's a little project mention shout out right there.
Yeah. So I think there's a difference in the way those two worlds kind of work. Yeah, and intentionality is more for the world of wellness, of sitting still, of meditating. Yeah.
So this is, it's interesting that you mentioned that this intentionality, or the way that it shows up in your art practice is by visioning. And this is the question that I wanted to ask you later. So maybe I'll come back to it then. But I think it's interesting when the way that artists revisit the same themes. So, for example, I understand that, like, with the story of your uncle, was something that you were exploring earlier in your practice in screenwriting, and then it's something that you've come back to later on. So, like, how, for example, with this project, has visioning what has that process looked like for you? Is like, do you tend to write things down? Do you like do vision boards? Do you is it more visualizations? Like how does that work for you?
It's all of those things.
Tick, tick, tick. All the above.
All the boxes. So I use, I love, I sound so shallow even when I say it, but I use Pinterest as a tool. I love Pinterest.
If the tools are there, then do with them what you will.
Yes. So I use Pinterest like a vision board, and I have kinds of, like, I have a board for this project that has it's so many subsections. So it looks like outlines of the story, so I can have a sense of where it's going. It looks like sometimes I'll create outlines as chapters, like chapters of my uncle's life, my Uncle David's life, that the project is rooted and grounded in. A lot of times it's visual. I'll use photographs a lot as the mood boards on Pinterest, or I'll have like a sketchbook where I print out photos and I make notes around the photos, so that I can set up like a shooting guide for myself before I go to create self-portraits. It looks like, how do you call it? A playlist, like a mixtape, I might say.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I will play music while I'm shooting myself, and I'll also play music while I'm getting into character. So it looks like dreams. Sometimes I'll wake up and I might dream about David, or I might dream about something from the past, and I'll wake up and I'll write it down.
Wow. So like dream journaling.
Dream journaling. I'm trying to interpret dreams also, find out the meaning, because I'll wake up and I'll write down, what does this dream mean and how does it relate to this in life? So all those ways.
Wow.
Yeah. It looks like
that's beautiful.
dancing too. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like dancing.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, because this is the first, as I understand it, the first time in your practice that you've kind of engaged with performance side of things as well. So we will get onto that later. And I don't want to give too much away about. Let's go through and share what the story is behind the way our tongues move first. So people can fully appreciate the joy that is your dancing with this as well. So what are the themes that inspire you most as an artist?
Themes that inspire me. I think that it's more that I think I'm more inspired by history and the way that we fit into the larger historical context that like sort of surround our lives. And so when I'm looking at retelling stories of family members, I think about them within the how they sort of mirror their time. And so those themes would be for the David Project, or the way our tongues move, it's gay liberation from a Black working class perspective. For my Aunt Mag, it is the Great Migration in African American history, when a lot of people were moving their bodies out of the South, the southern part of the states, as a freedom act into the North, into the West. And she was a part of that Great Migration, moving from the state of Georgia into first New York and then Ohio, where she landed. It looks like sexual liberation, the sexual revolution from the looking at my mother and the way my mother moved in the world, and how she had ownership over her body and over her pleasure. And she would say things like, "I'm a hoe just like my daddy."
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
like, this is how it is. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
all right.
yeah. And so even if for a while, like my mom, like I cleaned up her apartment when she passed, and I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm finding things. I'm like, oh yeah, my mother sewed sex toys. Like that was one of her hobbies. And
Oh,
so
wow,
yeah,
amazing.
I remember when of course I wasn't invited to the parties, but I remember her having the parties. I would have to go somewhere else, and all the ladies would gather, and then she would, yeah. But yeah, that was one of her side jobs that she had. Yeah. Let's see who else. Oh, looking at the crack epidemic from family members who have suffered with addiction. And so those are the themes. Like, I love history, and I love how and how we're a part of it, and it's a part of us. Like so.
Oh, that's a really interesting way of defining it. So you say, like, people think of history as like this static thing that doesn't necessarily relate to people's day-to-day life. So yeah, I think that translates so clearly into like this dedicated work that you've done around your uncle's story. So has it's closely connected, like this idea of oral traditions and story. And I wanted to ask you, like, how storytelling then plays into your practice as well. Is that something, particularly looking at ancestral knowledge, that has always been of interest to you?
Yeah, I come from a family of storytellers. I think like I feel like story has always been a part of my upbringing. Like they would tell stories about each other. They would tell stories of. I was born 2 years after my grandmother had passed away, and they were my mom and her siblings were very young. My mom was maybe 15 when her mom passed, so I grew up with stories of my grandmother. And they were always telling stories of each other growing up, so I felt like story was very present, and almost like it was his own character, like it is very present in
And
my upbringing.
is this the ancestor who made the move, who did the Great Migration? Then this was your grandma who made that move?
My Aunt Mag was my grandmother's eldest sister, and so this maternal figure made the move first, and then other people followed her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she moved north, and then her siblings started to move north, and that included my grandmother and my grandfather, who were both from Georgia. Yeah, but I don't think it was simply her moving that prompted them. I think also things that were happening during that time, because the year that they moved, I believe, was 1946, my grandparents. And 1946 was also a year in Georgia that a couple their own age was lynched near them.
Oh, wow.
And so they moved that same year, and it was one of those lynchings that made like international headlines. And they left Georgia then.
Unfortunately, there was someone who'd already, that there was that support to be able to make that move in a more, in a more secure way.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. My aunt was established. She had a house. She had rooms. So people would come stay in the rooms in her house until they could get on their feet. And things like that. Yeah.
And this goes to show just how much history is not a static thing. It really impacts people's lives, and it's what people's day-to-day is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as I understand it, your family's also, you've already mentioned that they're really storytellers, and were there other creatives in your family as well who you kind of influenced you on your own path as a creative and an artist?
Yes, my mother's twin sister, my mom was a twin. Her twin sister was a photographer. And so I grew up also with these visual images, and also with this idea of us being worthy of being captured, you know, of us being beautiful, of us, of our lives being worthy of being archived. And one of the reasons she became a photographer is because when her mother passed, when my grandmother passed, there were very few images of her. And so my aunt wanted to make sure that we lived through pictures. And so very early on, she studied photography and started to capture us. And when my aunt passed in 2008, my mom took over her practice and started shooting as well. Yeah. And so, so my aunt was the main artist in the family. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. So there was really so many different approaches that your family were taking with storytelling already that help with this kind of influence. Would you say that because so much of your process was to do with this current project you're working on, so much of it is to do with oral tradition. Like, was that something that you also grew up around? Like, it was just like a natural way of communicating stories for people? Was
I think
that mode?
I think it just it's so organic and so natural for them just to hear them talk. It's almost like gossip, like that the gossiping was the gossiping about each other was so rich and entertaining that that would be a part of the thing that would happen when they would get together to tell a story of David when he was 6, or Uncle Dude when he was 15, or I guess I'm struggling to, because it's something so as ordinary as eating for me. But then I know it's also special because when I step back from it and I observe my family telling stories today, I see how physical they are when they're telling the stories, how theatrical it is, how over the top it is, and how it also shifts and changes depending on who's listening. How big the story is or how quiet it is. Sometimes when they're whispering something. The last time I went home, I would ask people, can I record you saying this? And they would either say yeah or no. Just
not this time.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you, but don't record it. And then it always becomes like this whisper. Like even if we're just like I was in a car with a cousin.
There's no one else here.
There's nobody here. We were whispering and we're turning our heads to the side and I have to listen closely.
We're in a moving vehicle. Like, it's okay. No one's gonna pick up on this.
Yes. But it's a way of what you call a hush truth, whispering the truth, and the more quiet it is, it's almost like the more truth. Yeah, the more truth
compacted into this. It's like, oh my God.
When it's big and loud, it's a little bit of fabrication going on here.
Just like the quieter I am, the more sincere.
Yeah.
Got it.
So the stories were always there, and it was a way of them allowing me to know who they are, allowing me to know who my grandmother was, in a way of, I think, connecting like my own experience as a child, because the stories would start when I was a child, to their experiences of childhood. But my mother is the one who continued to tell me stories, and the stories would mature as I matured. So I might learn about my Uncle David and the fight that he may have had when he was a school kid. And then when I was old enough, she would tell me about, I would ask questions when he was, when he grew ill from HIV Aids, and then I would learn about the politics of the bathhouses and what might have happened in the bathhouses and how long he went, or I might learn about one of his marriages or attempts at marriage, or but his adult life would the stories of his adult life would come into fruition as I matured more. Yeah.
So you'd build the picture of him, and your understanding of him over time.
Over
as
time,
well.
yeah.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, it's you're recounting his story in part as someone who, tragically was a victim of this epidemic, really a pandemic that was unfolding, and I wanted to understand why it was important to you to be able to merge the personal and the political in this way, and like the micro and the macro, because it's I guess it ties into this idea you already mentioned of history isn't a static thing. It's people's lives, and so what was it specifically about your Uncle David's story that that drew you to want to merge those two, the political and the personal, together?
When I think about the history of HIV/AIDS in particular, I think one of the biggest things that stands out is that, well, at least for Black people in America, it was understood and presented as like a white gay male disease, even though of the first original patients, when we understood when science started to better understand what this was, there was a Black male in that group, but he wasn't identified as such. And I think that it is, and I think that also influenced behavior, and or sort of a denial of the possibility that this could touch your own life. And so I don't know. I think it's as an American also, I think we're taught to think of ourselves as individuals, and that we walk kind of like you are the author of your own destiny, sort of like, in that you have these rights and that you have these privileges, and which is great, but it divorces you from the collective, and it divorces you from sort of the forces that are at work that are outside of your individual will. And so I wanted to, and when I start to see that, oh, he's a part of this pattern, or she's a part of this pattern, she connects to other people who are thinking and moving and behaving in this way, then I think it's important to see ourselves not just as individuals, but as a collective, and as a collective moving through history in this time and space and together. Yeah. Murmuration, like the birds in flight that sort of are moving together towards a destination. Yeah.
Like what do they call it? Like like you get the clouds of birds moving together.
Yes.
I forget the term now. It will come to me at some random point later on in the conversation. Yes. But yeah, that's really I think that's such a beautiful way of putting it, and a really important image to communicate that as well. So yeah, how did the project come about in the first place?
Well, when my Uncle David died, I was a freshman in college, and I was a theater student and a film minor. Eventually, I went to film school to study screenwriting, but at the time, I was trying to make sense of his life and trying to sort of tell his story. But I was 19, and there, I didn't know much of it, and it was so I didn't finish it in that form. But when I moved to Amsterdam, we sold our house in Los Angeles, bought a camera, and and the conversations with family became more engaged because I was so far away. So the way that we would connect would be over the phone, and then I would, and I think that kind of opened up to more time to sit and listen to what my mother had to say about her brothers, to what my brothers had to say about each other, to what they had to say about my mom. And so I just started listening to family and thinking of ways to sort of re-engage with telling the story of family. And it first became these very short stories that I would take a snippet of a conversation my mom might have said. Oh, and I had the first iteration in Amsterdam was called Painted Lips Don't Lie, because I was listening to my mother tell these stories, and I was just taking the little excerpts of the funniest bits and like recording them. And I had this little blog where my husband would draw, that would illustrate the picture that illustrate the part of the story that she was saying that I had collected as a snippet. But then I realized that I had this camera that we bought when we sold our house. And originally the camera was going to be for me to interview other artists like we're doing here and photograph them. Then I started to turn the camera on myself. And I was like, oh, maybe I can tell their stories this way, collect the stories. And instead of having Brian illustrate, maybe I'm illustrating through like performing for the camera by dressing up as my uncle, by telling their stories.
And Brian is your partner.
Oh, sorry, yes. And Brian Ali Harding.
He's also like, do you work together as a creative duo?
Yeah. So not so much lately, but there's always been this push and pull, because when we first met, he was already a working filmmaker and I was in film school, and he was like, "We can work together." I'm like, "Dude, I'm not working with you."
I was like, "Nice try."
Yeah, nice try. But now I'm like, "Brian, can you help me?" And he's like, "Enough, woman."
It's like, I'll ask you again later. It's fine.
So, but we have worked together. Like Brian works as a visual effects artist and a cinematographer. So when I was more engaged as a filmmaker, I would write, direct, and produce, and he would work as my cinematographer, also producing and any visual effects that needed to be done, he would do it. So, but now for the project where I'm working as a photographer, sometimes he'll work as my assistant. He earns some money in order for me to be able to buy props and costumes and all these things. So it's a continual creative relationship as well as a personal relationship. Yeah,
that's cool, because then you also get to kind of talk immediately about ideas that pop into your head about, okay, so I'm thinking about portraying this story that I was talking to this family member about, and kind of get immediate thoughts. I'm like, oh, how could I create that?
No.
We have
scheduled work times and conversation times, and he really is busy with his own thing. So there are times where we're engaged in conversations about the work. Or he's intrusive, where I'm talking with other collaborators and he'll join in. I'm like, "It's not your time."
It's like, that's interesting. This is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
I'll follow up with you about this afterwards.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. So coming back to the key themes that you're bringing to light with the way our tongues move. So why was it so important to you to be able to humanize your uncle in this way? And I think it's also interesting that you kind of came back to revisit his story whilst the world was also going through this new pandemic, a different type of pandemic that was affecting all communities. Why was it important to be able to humanize him? in these portraits that you create?
I think less about humanizing, because he was my favorite uncle. So as gay uncles tend to be, he was my very favorite uncle. So he was always human and dear to me. But I think the idea of sort of preserving his legacy, and having future generations know who he is and who he was, whether that's in the family, our blood relatives, or sort of his queer descendants, so that they know that this life existed, and that this life made a way, sort of open doors of being that wasn't available necessarily before. I think I Googled his name one day and I didn't find anything, and that disturbed me, because it was such a big life, and and he took up a lot of space, even in my life. He was a grand figure. And I felt like as much blood, sweat, and tears he put into living should be recognized and honored. Yeah.
Oh, I like that distinction between really the humanizing versus the documenting for prosperity, and the idea of showing what possibility there is, because back in, I think, the way that you kind of dissect these intersections of, as you mentioned before, like being working class, black, gay in the 80s and 90s. Like now we have shows like Pose, but there was a whole string of change makers who had to come into play to reach this point. So there's also that side of things. It's like there are people actually continually pushing forward every day. So, and the portraits that you create are they're really stunning, and they're so full of life, and like you say, such a huge character that you managed to embody through this. So what was the process like then of like talking to your family members and recounting and getting these accounts from them? Because if this was all during the pandemic, so I'm guessing this was like Zoom calls.
Zoom calls and FaceTime video, FaceTime audio, WhatsApp. Also, letter writing, because in talking to some family members, they couldn't stay on topic.
Just like, and then this thing happened, and then you never gave me back that thing.
Yes. So I'm like, let me write you a letter, and then you can answer the question in this letter. And so then, for my Uncle Dude in particular, it's easier to have. So there will be these international letters, and I'm like, oh, I got a letter from Uncle Dude. So there would be conversations, and the conversations would sometimes contradict one another. So, for example, my Uncle David staged a grand gay wedding in 1973 in Cleveland, Ohio, in Middle America, and his groom was a no-show. Now, my mother talks about this wedding in detail. My aunt says she doesn't remember it at all. She'll say things like, y'all keep talking about this first wedding, but I don't remember it. And then my mom would say, because you didn't come, like nobody in the family showed up. Yes,
that would explain it. Like, I don't recall. That makes sense. Sense.
But this idea of memory, and to hear what people remember and how they remember, and I can see that there may have been some details that my mom may have gotten mixed up, because my mom would be like, we wore blue velour bridesmaids gowns, and my aunt would be like,
Wow.
no, those blue velour dresses were from his wedding to Cookie, and I made those dresses. And my mom would be like, no, David sewed, and my aunt would be like, no, David can't sew. Like he can sew on a button, he can maybe fix a hem, you know. But then I would ask like David's friends if they're and it's so sensitive because people are they're older and they're passing away. So when I go home, I try to meet with people and have these conversations. But one of his friends, his name was Albert, and I would be like, Albert, was there a wedding? And he was like, yeah, I think David tried to marry Jimmy in the same hall that he married Cookie later on, 2 years later.
He tried.
Yeah.
He tried. Wow.
Yeah, so I know that this was a real thing because his friends remember it. My mom remembers it, even though my aunt doesn't remember it. Yeah, and what they remember, like my uncle Doug would be like, yeah, I remember he tried to be in drag and his lipstick was all crooked and shit. Like the details that they remember and don't remember, yeah. And the humor and the joy and the love that they have for one another comes out, in their stories and in their remembrances.
That's incredible. Yeah, I think this kind of the love that you've like documented in this really comes across in the way that like the portraits are done so sensitively. What else? What did you learn? Anything else about the dynamics of your family through these conversations?
Did I learn something through the dynamics of my family? You know what? I learned how. I saw how respectability politics play strongly in our family dynamics, and how it shapes memory also. Because there was a lot of shame with my uncle being gay, there were a lot of things that they would shut out, yeah, I think that's chiefly how, like, if you don't want to know, you don't know and you don't remember. That we discard narratives that don't fit our vision of who a person is or how a person should be. Yeah.
Wow, this must have been such an intense process to actually go through as well. You know,
it's intense and it's also challenging because I feel like on one hand, like I want to be as honest as possible about who we are and how we are. But then I also recognize, there's certain things about me I don't want people to know, you know, and how do you walk that line between being truthful, being vulnerable, being honest and open, but also maintaining a sense of privacy and respect for your own story or for the stories of the people that you're telling. Like, how much do you let other people in? Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think something that is really interesting in the way that you've approached this is like how you've kind of assumed the griot role, but then you've amplified it by adding in these visual elements, so the film element, the photography, the performance side of things as well. So you mentioned earlier that you're bringing dance in as well. Also, this era, the soundtrack is just, it has to be incredible. It's such a beautiful era for music. How did you arrive at mixing this particular combination of of parts of your practice together to like produce these portraits?
Well, I think for the way our tongues move, the first time that I shared the work publicly was in Montana in the United States at a photo book portfolio review. And that was the first time when I was getting feedbacks from professional photographers. I noticed how they focus on the performance within the photography more than they focus on the photography itself. And so I started to wonder, like, am I in the wrong camp? Like, should I be with the performance artist? Or does David want performance to be more of a part of this project? And so I engaged this project with his permission, and I also connect with his vision for this work by journaling and the meditation. And I asked this question, like, do you want performance? And how would I engage with performance? One of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to photograph myself doing a dance of death or dancing with death. And I started to look into different dance forms that might lend itself to that. And I came across this Japanese dance form called Buto that I saw happened, in the late 50s in Japan as a rejection of like Western style dance and Western ballet. These trained dance professionals wanted to find ways to look at their own bodies, the way that Japanese bodies move, and sort of bring that onto the dance floor, bring that into their movements, the way peasants moved. I think also at the time that a lot of Japanese people were being deformed by mercury poisoning. And so they wanted to bring in not only the beauty in dance, but also the deformity, also things that we would consider ugly. And then I also saw that all ages, all body types were engaged in Buto. And I'm like, oh, that's a way that I can enter into dance. So I went to Japan to study Buto. And then one of the participants hosted a Buto retreat in Mexico. And so I went to that, and I fell in love with the way that that the body could also tell this story. I may have gotten a little carried away.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about that. It's the participation.
Yeah. So I had to bring myself back and remember you're dancing in front of the camera, Malika. So there is a bit of a performance that I see for the project in the way that I can use Buto to help tell David's story, but also in the way that I invite dance back into the studio so that the movements that when I'm performing in front of the camera, I can use some of the choreography and some of the ways that I've learned to move and use that to help me tell the story visually still.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like, whereabouts in Japan did you go?
I went to a little village called Toyoma. Well, I landed in Tokyo, but most of the retreat happened in Toyoma in the gym where the co-founder of this company, a Buto dance company called Senkai Juku, is from. And we slept on the floor in the gymnasium, and we danced all day, and we ate two plant-based meals a day, pickled things that the sensei grew in his garden in preparation for the. Yeah, it was really
delightful.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not everybody was happy with eating the 2 plant-based meals a day, but
I'm just like, this sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And how long was this for, out of interest?
I think it was either 8 days or 10 days, but we ate the same thing every day, twice a day. That's what I was not expecting. Yeah, and I think that was a part of where some people kind of revolted against it. But it was like a big detox. Like my body was really releasing a lot of stuff.
And I think also potentially because if you were dancing, it's obviously very somatic practice as well. So then you're being giving you the opportunity to move through the grief of losing this favorite uncle as well. So I can only imagine that it must have been very intense emotionally, but very rewarding as well to get to physically move through that.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to find out, because there's a strong element of drag in this, which is, you just had actually before we started this conversation, you were telling me a little bit about a drag makeup workshop that you attended yesterday. Is this your first exploration of drag and with the way our tongues move? Like, is it something that you'd ever heard of before, that women can also do drag?
Yeah, this was my first exploration in drag, and and I didn't. Did I know that women could do drag? Not necessarily. Well, I've always thought of drag as an art form for male performers impersonating or embodying women, female characters. But had I given much thought to the gender reversal? No. And I hadn't given much thought to me being in drag until I started to want to portray my uncle and what vulnerabilities that brought out. Because there's certain tools that you can that you use that are traditionally feminine and that you use as markers of beauty. And so when you go across the spectrum to the other end, and you're stripped away of certain things, I had to look at I see myself differently. I realized that I was afraid to, even though I had been collecting like mustaches, I had been collecting these garments, I was afraid of actually putting on the costume, putting on the facial hair. I was afraid of doing historian justice. But then when we had to sit still for the pandemic, I'm like, okay, it's time. There's nothing else for me to do but to put on this mustache, to put on this wig, and to and try to tell these stories visually. I'm not so cute as a man. And so I had to find my swag too. And so the more that I got into it, the more
it's such a big transformation, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah. What was it like the first time you put on drag? Like, were you shocked? Did you do your own makeup?
I did my own makeup. I put the hair, my own makeup, my own styling, my own wardrobe. And it was fun. It was fun, but it was also like, oh yeah, it's strange, because you're becoming these other beings and not necessarily yourself, and you want to be true to that. And it's also a strange sort of, like, stepping into someone else's skin can be a little unnerving.
Yeah, because I guess also it's like, did you feel like you were stepping into Uncle David's persona when you were doing that, or did it feel more like, I'm putting on this drag and this is like the drag version of me? Like, it hadn't evolved yet into David?
Yeah, both. So in the beginning, it felt like that I'm trying to tell a David story, but I haven't gotten David just yet. But they're also like accepting that I am in David's lineage. So there's going to be this mixture of who I am and who he was, and let that spillage sort of happen, and make room and make space and give myself permission for that to be. But then with the first wedding is the first time I shot. With the second wedding, I actually looked at pictures of David and tried to model his hair, tried to model his mustache, tried to pose like him. So there was more of an embodying in that. And then the story of his groomsmen, I tried to really step more into their shoes, and you can see the transformation start to. The more that I do it, the more I become the characters that the people that I'm trying to embody. Yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting the way that you approach this, and I think, I mean, what is next? What is next for the project? Because there are these performance elements. So you've obviously, the portraits are available to view on MalikaAliHarding.com. So please do check them out. But how do you, what is next for the performance side of things, and where do you want to see the project go?
I think I need to release the project in chunks, like volume 1, volume 2, or else it'll just be this little secret that I have that I'm developing. So I think I'm going to start releasing it slowly, publicly. I think with exhibitions and performances, and I've been flirting with the runway as performance, sort of this cross between ballroom culture and Ebony Fashion Fair and
Wow.
yeah, because I'm collecting all of these beautiful garments, and it would be nice to walk the runway. So,
and then actually, this is the point I wanted to ask you earlier. What do you know? What his favorite song was? His favorite bands, and
I know what his favorite gospel song. I remember the gospel song that we sang. That was something, not me. I didn't sing it, but that was something.
I was not there at the time, but I've heard through various avenues. I've been told.
His favorite gospel, the song that was sung at his funeral was "If I Could Help Somebody," and that spoke to his giving nature, because he was a generous human being. But he was big into the woman that he married for only 2 weeks. She was a pianist, and David was also in the gospel choir. And they would go to these musical conferences together to hear the newest gospel songs being released, so they can bring back music for the choir, or they would collect old albums or old spirituals. So he was big into gospel music, into spiritual music. And I asked because my grandmother played the piano, and I asked my aunt if David played the piano, and she was like, he thought he could. Yes.
Oh, was there any need for that?
Yeah.
So potentially, these kinds of musical influences could also kind of play out in how these performances evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I see this interplay between sort of. Because he was in the men's choir, and between the men's choir, the movement of the men's choir, and the bathhouse, both being sacred spaces, one with sex, one without sex, but also engaging these spaces that he occupied at the same time, and sort of tearing down this line between the sacred and the secular, between what's considered sinful and what's considered sacred, and just looking at that line and blurring that line in the way that he did, but doing it through performance and photography. Yeah.
Well, I hope to see this on an exhibition circuit very soon. And where can people find out more about your practice, and where can people find you to keep up to date with the way our tongues move?
On Instagram, I really document the journey. So on IG, it's at Story Rebels, StoryRebels. And then the website for the project is MalikaAliHarding.com.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Malika. This has been a beautiful conversation. Thank you for sharing so much about your family, about this creative process that you've been on. And if you'd like to find out more about the portraits, please, I really encourage you to go to the website to see them, because the wigs are wigging.
Hey!
I was like, I'm going to be checking in on how these wigs evolve. There's something.
Yes.
So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for this invitation. Thank you for this time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for sharing it, and thank you for being here. So for everyone listening, please go to @StoryRebels to follow along. You've been listening to the Quick and the Brave podcast. Please like, subscribe, all of the notification type things, you know what to do. You can also follow along at The Quick and the Brave on Instagram and at thequickandthebrave.com. So Malika, thank you once again.
Yay, thank you.
I love talking to you today. Thank you for your time.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening. Discover more from TQTB. Subscribe to our YouTube and mailing list for the latest interviews, news, and more. Follow us on socials at The Quick and the Brave. The Quick and the Brave. Culture today.